Well, first I should say hello and welcome back to the GorillaBiker, and we have Niall here with us. Now, you might remember Niall from the video, well, multiple videos, but if you're here after watching the CTX1300 video, Niall is the owner who was very kind to give us a loan of it for said video. So, after many questions, Niall is going to answer some questions. He also owned a ST1300 and he road tripped around Europe, did a good solid road trip on that bike and loved it. But he actually did decide on the CTX1300. So I suppose the first question that a lot of people were interested in, Niall, is why? Why did you end up going with the CTX over another ST?
I think we even touched on it in a previous video, or maybe you did. I had an ST, and I had the option of getting another ST here.
Yeah.
But, do something new. CTX is different. I've never had one, so I think that was the main reason.
Yeah, and so the main... Yeah, that makes sense. That's fair. So, would you say then the main reason was just to try something different?
Yes.
Very fair, very reasonable. And what's like, say if you were to have the option right now to have that bike and an ST, what would you primarily use the ST for, and what would you always pick that one over? Like if it's a day, if you're going on say, a spirited mountain ride on twisty turnies, would you take that or the ST?
Oh, on the twisty turnies, I'd say I would go with the ST.
And for a commute to work?
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one's more modern, has ABS, traction control, more comfortable, but definitely not as lively as the ST, and the ST handled the twisties a lot better.
Yeah. Which I suppose is a lot to do with, ground clearance. You were saying that you touched down your pegs recently just taking a left turn at traffic lights.
I've done it a couple of times, yeah. Yeah. And I don't think I'm not sure I ever did that on the ST, maybe once.
Yeah, on a particularly harsh turn.
Yeah.
And so, say if you had the option for having a one bike garage, right, which we know right now obviously you're not in that situation, you could get a second bike if you wanted to, but if you could only have one bike for the next 10 years, would it be, and they both had 5,000 miles on the clock and both cost $5,000, which would it be, that or an ST?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I haven't owned this long enough, I don't think.
Right, that's fair.
I would say if they both had the same mileage
and cost the exact same, yeah,
I would probably go with the ST.
Interesting. And what would be the main reason for that?
A few reasons. Obviously, it handles better, more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely notice the difference between this and the ST with power.
Yeah.
The electric windshield was really handy too. Like when the weather was bad, you could put up the windshield and you were completely sheltered.
Yeah.
But then if you wanted some cool air, you could drop the windshield with a pneumatic visor and get a nice bit of wind. What else for the ST? That's about it. Oh, the front suspension on this is hard. It's not as bad as like I was expecting it to be. I know we talked about it in a different video where, my tire pressure at the front was too high.
Yeah.
And so since I changed that, it's a lot better. But still, the ST was a bit more forgiving over the bumps.
Right.
But I remember when I bought the ST, it was harder than I expected it to be on the front as well. So I think the ST had that little bit of a problem too.
Which is funny, because I feel like Honda do a lot of the same stuff on a lot of their bikes, and I don't know, do you remember, but when I had the CBF1000, the CBF1000 was actually woefully undersprung on the front, and that's something that I ran into that obviously I had to switch up my springs eventually, just because it was it was so divey. And it's funny, it's like Honda, they do so much so well on so many of their bikes, but then there's just one or two things that it's like, they phone it in. It's like they phoned in the front suspension on the CBF. They phoned in that. Like, okay, the CBF was soft and that's too hard, and the ST was partially too hard for you, but like, yeah, it's weird that they can't just get it right.
But yeah, I think... But I did say, though, I haven't had this bike long enough. Like,
yeah.
I did a long mileage on the ST, and it was very comfortable. But, it's still... after, I think 6 hours was the longest day I could do in the saddle. But that's me more than the bike, I think.
Well, I mean, 6 hours is a good stint on any bike, to be honest, so...
Yeah, I think I did the European trip, I did 2 6-hour days.
Yeah.
And I think they were probably, that was the limit of what I could do. So I haven't done anything like that on this yet. The longest I've done on this is, what, an hour and a half?
Probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, yeah.
2 hours maybe, yeah.
And I mean, the other thing is, not to talk up America too much, but I don't think you can compare European roads to roads here. I think the roads here are just in so much better condition. Riding 6 hours here is not the same as riding 6 hours in a lot of Europe.
But I don't remember any roads in Europe being particularly bad.
Oh, okay. Maybe you just hit good ones. When I rode back from Germany, there was some roads, especially in Belgium, that were just absolutely terrible.
Well, Belgium is famous for bad roads anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. It was honestly, like, if you had told me that those roads had recently been bombed by tiny bombs, I would have believed it. And so, right, you've answered the single bike garage question that, probably the ST, given that you haven't been on that bike long enough. But what if, you could have two bikes, like a big touring bike and a small lighter bike? Would you then go for an ST and a lighter bike, or would you go for that and a lighter bike? And what would your second bike be?
Wow. So the option is ST and a smaller bike, or this and a smaller bike?
Yes.
I don't know. That is a good question. Maybe...
Oh, watch out there. There's a spanner on the road.
What size was it?
Probably a 10.
Probably a 10. Maybe... Yeah, if I want to mix it up a little bit, maybe this on a smaller bike.
Yeah. And I think... Go on.
And did you ask me what kind of smaller bike, or did you know?
Yeah, do you have an idea in mind?
Yeah, I'd love... There's 3 different bikes I kind of have my eye on that I like the look of.
Yeah.
And I've never ridden any of them, so I don't know what I like to ride, but... the Bonneville T120...
Yep.
Which is kind of a bigger one of the lighter bikes. Or a Moto Guzzi V7, which is an 850cc.
Yep.
Or the older ones are the 750.
Yeah.
Or a Royal Enfield GT650. I like the look of them too, the Continentals.
Yep. So, I know my friend Hippo Drones, Pete, he's owned a V7 and he loved it. So Pete, chime in on that one. And if anyone's owned a T120 or a Royal Enfield, Interceptor or the Continental, let Niall know what out of those 3 you prefer, because I think I've said this to you before. I've been lucky enough that I got a very short spin on a T120, and I loved it. But I've never tried either of the other 2, so I can't really comment. But obviously, all 3 of those other options are very, very popular bikes.
And I've seen people describe the riding position of the Bonneville as the classic. If you sat down and pretended you were riding a bike,
yeah,
that's exactly where your hands would be in your legs. So I hear they're very comfortable.
Yeah. Yep. And then, so what I suppose is your favorite thing about CTX over the ST?
Ooh.
I'm hitting you with all the hard questions here, bud.
What's my favorite thing on the CTX over the ST?
Over the ST, yeah.
This is going to be such an old man answer, but the comfort. It is a slightly more comfortable seat. than the ST. Oh, the other thing as well is not as hot. The engine heat from the ST is a lot, and in North Carolina it'll be tough, I'd say. That's the only downside I'd see to. And I think it was a factor when I thought about the ST. I think I definitely did factor that in to say, you know, the engine heat could be excessive in the summertime.
Yeah.
Whereas the CTX still gives off a bit of heat off the V4, but not as bad.
No, like even that day we were out and I was doing the video on it. Like it was hot, and I put it this way: I never even thought to mention it because I genuinely didn't notice it. You know, watch stones there. So I mean, I can't say anything kind of more. I'm not going to say complimentary, but you know, more kind of fair in that I did not notice it, and I'm usually on bikes that are okay, not fully naked, but a hell of a lot less fared than that one. So if I didn't notice the difference, it's probably not bad.
Yeah. And this bike isn't slow by any means. It is noticeably slower than the ST.
Yeah.
Just coming around those twisties there now, you know, if you open the throttle even at 50, it'll still pull.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's one thing, obviously, I think I mentioned it twice, obviously, in, you know, start of it and the end of it, in that there's no like punch, like, you know, if I do that on this bike, you get that kind of, you know, that punch of power, whereas you don't seem to get that on the CTX. It's very much a very, 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 very smooth power delivery, which, I mean, is not a bad thing, especially, you know, considering, you know, you've had a pillion on that bike for, you know, a pretty decent spin, and you said you didn't even really notice them. So, I mean, that's kind of what it's for. So, I mean, that's, you know, that's a pretty good thing, because, you know, on the V-Strom can handle a passenger. I mean, I've done, you know, over 4 hours in a go with Toaster on the back. The same with the CBF. You know, we did long trips with her on the back on the CBF, and while the bikes handle fine, you definitely did know there was someone back there, you know. So I think the fact you didn't notice is kind of a testament to the fact that bike was designed more towards a kind of a Goldwing-esque, and that's a compliment, a Goldwing-esque style in that it's made to carry, you know, two people long distance comfortably, more so than also tear up back roads like an ST.
Yeah, just going back to I think you were talking about the throttle response as well. You know, it's a smoother power delivery on that. I actually prefer that. For me, personally, I prefer the smoother delivery. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you've said this is very twitchy, which it is. It is. Until you get up into like 4th or 5th gear, really.
And the ST was very smooth as well, I found. That had a nice smooth delivery as well.
Yeah.
But it's just, when you open the throttle on the ST, it was very easy to get to 70 mile an hour on the ST before you knew it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you know what? It had 40 brake horsepower on that bike, at least. I think 40 brake horsepower. Like it was. I mean, the ST is a bit of an animal, you know, and it's a bit of it's kind of sad that they don't, like, unless you go for a big BMW, which is extremely expensive, you know, or something like an S1000XR, which again it's not really the same thing, right? I mean, like, you have your K1600s, kind of similar to the CTX. In my opinion, it's more of a cruiser than a sports tour. Like, the age of the sports tour that you could ride to a racetrack very, very comfortably with the pillion on the back, drop all the bags off and still do decent times, it's kind of gone, you know. Whereas like the S1000XR, it is a sports tour. I think it's a magnificent bike, multi-strata sports tour, magnificent bike, but they're not the same thing. They're not designed as like, oh, this is pretty, as like comfort first, you know, with speed as well. You know, all those newer sports tours are much lighter and not really built as much for carrying two people long distance, you know?
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? The ST to me was the perfect bike.
Yeah.
As in, it was comfortable, powerful, handled the roads well. And it's a real pity that they didn't just carry on the ST. And they cancelled it in, 2012. It's a real pity that they didn't bring out a new version of it, continue the same type of bike. Whereas, you know, don't get me wrong, this is still a great bike as well, but
it's not the ST.
Yeah.
I get you. And it's funny because a fella who's been watching the channel a long time. He's actually the absolute gent who sent me the tall seat for the V-Strom. Ian, you know, he's had a lot of bikes. I take his opinion on bikes and I rate it very highly because he has a very similar taste to me. You know, he's owned a V-Strom. He has the CF Moto Ibex at the moment. He just got an MT450. You know, he's had some really nice bikes. Tracer 900 off the top of my head. Obviously, I'm not going to try to remember absolutely everything because I know I'll forget some. But, you know, as taste in bikes go and as the type of riding that he has said he does is the same kind of riding as, you know, what we do, basically. You know, never really completely taking the piss, but, you know, still well capable of riding in a spirited manner on back roads, say. And that was one thing, like, he was kind of pissed, and fair enough, because he had an ST. I think he was saying he bought it new and put 120,000 miles on it or so, and traded it in for a CTX and was just really, really, really disappointed because the CTX was you know, kind of espoused as the natural follow-on to an ST, which I think you would agree from what you've told me, and he definitely agrees. That's they shouldn't have advertised it as such, you know. Like, some kind of derivative, fine, but definitely not like a proper carry-on.
No, it's definitely not.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Would you think that the modern Goldwing would be more like the ST would have evolved to? I know the engine configuration is different, but...
I still think, like, ground clearance wise, yeah, okay, power, yeah, the power is there. I mean, those modern Goldwings are absolute beasts. But I think, this is the airport here, we might get to see some stuff take off. I think, though, the ground clearance thing, like the thing you've already run into, is... Okay, towing is enforced, so we won't stop for long. Not that they can tow our motorcycles, but yeah, I don't think there is really a natural kind of spiritual successor to the Goldwing, really, if you think about it. Or sorry, not as in the Goldwing is not a spiritual successor to the ST. I don't think one exists. Just kind of because that bigger, beefier sports tour is gone. Like, even if you look at what Honda did, you know, Honda have obviously the Goldwing now, the CTX is no longer there, the CBF is no longer there, the CTX is no longer there, but what they do have is the NT1100. And, like, the NT1100, by all accounts, is a very capable bike, and it's also, in my opinion, quite good looking. Borrows actually a little bit now that I think of it from the kind of front end of this, but it's still an Africa Twin engine, you know what I mean? It's not, there's no V4 there, there's no kind of little bit of difference. You have, like, so you went from having the ST, which was its own thing, and the Goldwing, which was its own thing, and the CBF, which was its own thing. Like, in my view, you had three similar but very distinct bikes. You had, like, the ST, the bigger, heavier sports tour, the CBF, which was, you know, the lighter sports tour that really probably was more geared towards, like, light touring, the ST more heavy touring, and then the Goldwing, which is like a world tour. And now you just have the NT and the Goldwing. And they don't really cover all the bases.
Yeah,
so
true.
Just like, I think this, probably the reason I don't think this would have ever survived is when it was first released, it cost like, what, $18,000? Like, if, yeah, something like that, $18,000 plus dollars for the deluxe. And that's too close in price to the Goldwing. Like, if someone was going for one of these back then, like, and you're looking for like a grand tour type thing, why not just step up to the Goldwing, you know? And I have a feeling that's probably really why these didn't sell well, is if you go into a showroom and this is sitting beside a Goldwing, I mean, size-wise, not crazy dissimilar. Weight-wise, okay, this has it's a little bit lighter, but, you know, I think a lot of people who, if you're going to get a several hundred kilo, like 380 kilo bike, what's the difference between 380 and like 420 kilo? But, you know, it's basically the same thing, so... Yeah, but I think this is cool, and I especially like it because it's a V4, and also they, you know, you don't see them around very often.
Yeah, I do like it, and I'm enjoying it, and you know, I'm looking forward to getting more mileage on it. Will I keep it forever? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And would you say it would probably elongate your ownership if and when you get a second lighter bike? I mean, I took this out today because we're just going for a short spin. No V-Strom. You know what I mean? Would you have jumped on this or the lighter bike for a spin like this? You know what I mean? That's kind of what I'd be thinking. Even, you know, if you had an ST and a lighter, smaller, nippier bike, you'd probably go for the lighter, smaller, nippier bike for short rides.
Yeah. It depends. It depends on... Yeah, I don't know. An ST will go anywhere. Well, any type of road.
Fair enough.
Maybe I'll just get an ST and
yeah, I mean, you could.
Nah, I'd rather this kind of bike and a smaller bike.
So I think then overall impressions to close it all out is you're still Team ST more so than Team CTX by the sounds of it.
Yeah. But as I said, it'd be nice to have, you know, it'd be nice if the ST was newer and had more features. Then again, not that this has much more features than the ST, but it has ABS and traction control, whereas most STs here don't have ABS.
Yeah.
My one did, but most of them here don't for some reason.
It wasn't a thing over here. Yeah.
Look, I still am Team ST, I think. Yeah, but as I said, I haven't put enough mileage on this yet to know for sure.
Very fair. And speaking of which, if you keep watching the channel, in 2 weeks, we are riding over to Asheville. Niall is going to be on a CTX. Toaster's going to be on her, we'll call it the Uber Rebel 500. It will actually be in its final form at that point, which you haven't seen everything yet on the channel, but there's one more modification to come. And I will be on the V-Strom, of course. So... if you want to see this on a longer spin, I'm sure Niall might offer up some thoughts after a long day on it and see how he feels. And while we're over there, we'll get to do some more twisty roads as well. So again, I'm sure we can squeeze some brain thoughts out of Niall when we do that. So Niall, thank you very much for the mini interview. Much appreciated. If you are someone who has owned a CTX and an ST, like Niall, you know, drop your thoughts. Obviously, Ian, I do, and I hope I wasn't too flippant when I made the review that, you know, this is what this bike is for kind of deal. I never owned an ST, which is why I wanted to follow up with Niall on this, because to me, riding this bike as a kind of a standalone unit, I was impressed. I thought it was very nice. I think it's interesting looking. I think it's very comfortable, you know, all those things, but it definitely is not, you know, fast. I think that's a fair thing to do. Fast either in corners or fast in particularly fast in a straight line. It still gets up there and gets up there smoothly. But yeah, I hope I didn't insult a lot of people who were very upset when this came out over the ST. But yeah, that's my little mea culpa there. Not a previous owner, so. But if you watch, thank you very much for watching. As always, a very special thank you to all of my patrons, and again, special thank you to Niall for offering his brain thoughts up on this one. And Niall, do you have any question for me, I suppose, to be fair, since you just answered lots of my questions?
No
question. I talk too much, he says. But yeah, if you watch, thanks again. Adios. Outro crew. Niall, because he just answered lots of questions, is he's free. You're safe, Niall, today. I won't ask you any. The reason I think I talk about like bike questions a lot is I literally think about this 24/7, 365 days a year, is like, what should I add to the garage or remove from the garage or swap from the garage? And this poor bike has been on the theoretical chopping block for quite a while. And I still think about that back and forth. And right now in my brain, I am thinking I could trade that in or sell it and buy a brand new DR650. If you'd like to hear my thoughts about that, let me know and I'll make a video on it. Otherwise, what would you do? Would you keep the Z900RS or buy a DR650? Sell it and buy a DR650. Let me know, Outro Crew. Bye, Outro Crew.